Hey everyone, this is Hubwood and today we are going to take a look at the brand new version of the MSI Vector HX AI, which is now available with the new Blackwell NVIDIA GPU, the RTX 5070 Ti Mobile, in a version for most likely less than €2,000 or $2,000, making it the cheapest 12GB VRAM laptop, at least in Europe, and I think the price for that will most likely come down in a few months. It's also available with the RTX 5080 and an Intel Core Ultra 9 275HX instead the Core Ultra 7 255HX in today's tested machine. Now usually the most affordable laptops with a certain mobile GPU cheap out on many aspects, and while the MSI Vector HX isn't perfect and it has some flaws, I can already tell you I think it's a pretty good laptop overall. As mentioned, it comes with the Intel Core Ultra 7 255HX CPU, which sports 8 performance cores and 12 E-cores and no hyper-threading. Also the mentioned RTX 5070 Ti with up to 140 watt, including dynamic boost and 12GB of fast GDDR7 VRAM. Unfortunately, this cheapest version only comes with 16GB of DDR5 5600 megatransfer RAM, but it can be upgraded by up to 96GB. And MSI only installed a small 512GB SSD in a PCI Express 5 slot in here, while it has a second PCI Express Generation 4 slot available as well. A 16-inch 2560 by 1600p 240Hz IPS display. In this configuration it comes with Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.4, 2 Thunderbolt 5 ports, a 90 Wh battery and a 330 watt charger, a Full HD webcam with Windows Hello and Windows 11 Home. The Vector HX definitely is on the heavier side of 16-inch laptops with its 2.7 kg plus a few gram for the charger, and it's definitely not a thin and light. But MSI is trying to pack a lot of performance in here and the TDP is pretty high. Compared to my 15-inch Aorus 15, it's just as wide, but due to the ledge behind the screen at the back, the MSI is noticeably bigger overall. It is basically identical to its predecessor in terms of the design, the build quality and materials with its dark color, the aluminum lid and the good hinges, while the rest of the laptop is made out of plastic that just looks like the aluminum lid as well. It is built quite sturdy and feels valuable enough for a $2,000 or Euro laptop in my opinion, while it can also be opened with one hand super easily. It doesn't easily attract fingerprints over here, but once they're on there, it's a bit harder to wipe them off. The RGB lit keyboard has 24 zones, but you can't configure each key individually. It also has a small numpad, which in my opinion isn't perfect, but better than nothing. Previous versions of the MSI Vector HX had SteelSeries keyboards, which is not the case here, but writing felt absolutely fine and comfortable for me, while that of course is very subjective. The touchpad is placed right in the center, felt smooth and worked flawlessly for me, while it doesn't execute clicks if you press down at the top of it. The port selection is decent with 2 Thunderbolt 5 ports with DisplayPort support on the left side, but since the DisplayPort output is connected via the integrated GPU, that would not work if you set the mux switch in here to discrete GPU only. While MSI claims it has power delivery 3.1, I was unfortunately not able to charge the laptop with my 100 watt USB-C charger or my 65 watt power bank. It's also accompanied by a SD card slot over here. And at the back it has a 2.5 gigabit LAN port, the proprietary power connector, which is very stable, and an HDMI 2.1 port, which can do up to 4K at 120 Hz. And on the right side we're getting 2 USB 3.2 Type A ports and an audio jack. So the port selection is actually pretty good, while the placement of the 2 USB ports on the right side is not that optimal if you're using a cable mouse. PS, and this is what the integrated camera looks like under good lighting conditions and what the integrated microphone sounds like. The fast 240Hz 16-inch matte IPS screen with a resolution of 2560 by 1600 pixels has a pretty good color accuracy and a great maximum brightness of over 500 nits, meaning with its matte display it's ready for some outdoor action, at least in the shadows. It will almost be a perfect display, but it doesn't have adaptive sync, which definitely is a pity, while due to the high refresh rate of 240 Hz, I wasn't really noticing any tearing when playing games on it. But it's of course still not as smooth as with adaptive sync. In my opinion, one of the Vector 16 HX's flaws is its cooling system. Or let me be more precise, probably the way MSI handled the software and the fan tuning. One thing up front, yes, it is possible to play games with decent performance at acceptable loudness. But let us dive a bit deeper into that aspect. The MSI Vector 16 HX AI comes with the known MSI power modes: AI tuned, which I ignored, performance, balanced, and silent/eco. Only when using the performance mode we can manually adjust the fan speed, and here you can actually completely turn off the fans. Or at least make them more silent. And I really wished they allowed that as well for the other power modes, as using the silent mode, the fans basically never turn off and are quite hearable, even when the whole laptop only uses around 5 watt on idle. And that makes absolutely no sense, and MSI should fix that ASAP. Also, no icon showed up when I was switching the power modes after a software update, which is a bit annoying to be honest. By the way, the MSI Vector 16 HX has 4 vents for hot air, 2 at each side and 2 at the back, and a rather big cooling system altogether in here. Now, I was using Cyberpunk 2077 at 1600p and ultra settings to test the difference between these power modes. Using the performance mode with full fan speed after 10 minutes, that resulted in an average of 73 FPS, 71 degrees Celsius for the GPU, 75 degrees Celsius for the CPU, and incredibly loud fans with around 63 decibel. And not even a headset will block that noise. Setting the fans to auto when using the performance mode is only slightly less loud. Same 73 FPS, but now 75 degrees Celsius for the GPU and 78 to 82 degrees Celsius for the CPU, and still 60 decibels. The sweet spot definitely is the balanced mode. The performance is only slightly weaker with 69 FPS, 80 degrees Celsius for the GPU and 83 degrees Celsius for the CPU, while the fan noise was much lower and really acceptable with now 47 decibel. The fans now didn't feel loud and the noise is definitely endurable just okay. I would definitely use the balanced mode unless I really needed the last few % of performance. Unfortunately, the silent mode/eco mode throttles the system so much, AAA gaming is barely possible due to suboptimal frame times and rubber banding like behavior. 42 FPS with lots of stuttering, and 51 degrees Celsius for the GPU, 55 degrees Celsius for the CPU, and now only 37 decibel. And all of that was measured at a room temperature of around 21 to 22 degrees Celsius. The same also applies to gaming on battery, which is only possible with sad eco mode, as otherwise the system would throttle way too much here. I really think that MSI should add the fan curves for all the profiles and offer a 4th profile between balanced and silent, which still allows some AAA gaming at even lower noise levels, which in my opinion would absolutely be possible. MSI, if you're watching, please, this would make so much sense and add a lot of value to this laptop. Speaking of the battery, MSI claims it's a 90 Wh unit, but according to HW Info, mine only has around 84 Wh even after calibrating it. So maybe I had an issue with hardware info or something was off with my laptop altogether. The result on idle was actually pretty solid with around 15.5 hours at the display brightness of 20% and activated Wi-Fi, as the total system power usage is able to go as low as around 5.8 watt, which is pretty decent for such a powerful machine. After the most recent BIOS update, the YouTube test at 50% brightness, 20% loudness with headphones on eco mode with battery savings activated was around 7.5 hours. Could be better, but okay overall. Playing Cyberpunk 2077 using the eco mode on battery resulted in around 90 minutes of runtime. While AAA gaming is very handicapped that way performance-wise. The speakers in here are actually pretty decent both in loudness and sound quality, but for a €2,000 or dollar laptop I expect them to be at least okay. And I think for a gaming laptop they are fine. Now, opening the laptop for upgrades is possible, but it's not fun, like no fun at all. There's a lot of things to consider. While making this video, I actually decided to upgrade it with a second 2TB SSD and 64GB of RAM, since I'm actually going to keep this laptop for a while for myself. And I highly recommend watching a video on how to open this specific laptop first, as it's a bit different than with other laptops. But once we're inside, we can easily upgrade the RAM and the two SSDs. While the 512GB SSD only performs mediocre with okay reading but unspectacular writing speeds, the Intel Core Ultra 255HX is darn fast with great results for Cinebench R23 and 24. The PC Mark 10 results weren't as good as I expected, but at these higher scores it's hard to tell what the issue is, while I assume it depends a lot on the SSD speed here. Though, high scores for the budgest system benchmark in Premiere Pro, and the 5070 Ti also excelled at the Blender benchmark. Now in the process of preparing this review, I actually upgraded the MSI Vector HX with 64GB of Kingston Fury DDR5 5600 megatransfer RAM with a latency of 40 CL and a second 2TB Crucial P3 Plus M.2. And I did some retests in games and benchmarks to see if there was any difference. Considering the gaming performance, I also made two videos where I compare it with one the RTX 4070 and the RTX 4080 at 1080p and 1440p. And at 1080p, the 5070 Ti is around 32% faster than the 4070, while at 1440p that was already 49%. I also have a dedicated video in which I'm testing no less than 30 games on this specific laptop, so check that one out next. But right now, let's have a quick look at the gaming performance in some of the games first. All games have been tested at the laptop's highest performance mode in the original 16GB RAM configuration while the laptop was plugged in. So the first game for today is Assassin's Creed Shadows at 1440p, which is brutally demanding on your hardware configuration. Here I was actually using the optimized settings suggestion by Digital Foundry, the high settings version, in combination with DLSS balanced and frame gen by 2. That resulted in an average of around 115 FPS and 1% lows of 45, while I think the frame time and 1% low reading isn't correct here, or the game is using the 1% lows of the performance without frame gen, as without frame gen activated the average FPS would be around 60, so the game would still be playable that way. With DLSS 4, the balance setting looks absolutely great, especially on a smaller 16-inch screen in a laptop. So even if you're not a fan of frame gen, which I can understand, not using DLSS on a laptop means you're missing out on performance. After 15 minutes in a 128-player conquest map in Battlefield 2042 at 1440p with the high preset and DLSS on quality, I saw an average of 133 FPS and 1% lows of 67. Now, I'm not sure if you'd prefer lower settings to get the most possible FPS here, but me personally, I would probably play that way myself. I was a bit surprised that the CPU usage is so high here and the GPU is not even fully maxed out all the time, leading to a lower watt usage for the GPU. I don't actually think the Ultra 7 255HX, which is a very strong CPU, is the bottleneck here, though probably the game's engine. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle ran well at 1440p Ultra with the DLSS on balanced, with an average of 105 to 115 FPS depending on the map. Very smooth gameplay, flat frame time graph and no stuttering whatsoever, so again perfectly playable with great visuals on the MSI Vector HX. But of course, you could also use full ray tracing here if you prefer that, and you'll probably get around 60 FPS with that. The Last of Us Part 2 is just perfectly optimized in contrast to Part 1 when that came out for the PC a while ago. At 1440p with very high settings and DLSS on quality, I saw an average of around 95 to 115 FPS and 1% lows of 65 to 81 FPS. Smooth gameplay and the game looks fine. Though, of course, it's not the game with the best graphics around, I know that. Still enjoyable, perfect experience. Now, in a match against bots, I saw an average of 320 FPS with ultra settings at 1440p and activated DLSS in Overwatch 2. 1% lows were at around 160 FPS. Now, to be fair, the FPS haven't been much higher using the low settings, so it's probably bottlenecked by the CPU, the RAM or something else. But I guess 320 FPS is okay for most people here, right? Or is it? Now, the MSI Claw 16 HX AI is not a perfect laptop, but I think considering it's probably one of the cheapest RTX 5070 Ti laptops available at launch, and probably for some time, it's a solid machine overall, especially if upgraded with a bigger SSD and a bit more RAM by yourself. It's certainly not the most mobile laptop which you would use if you travel a lot, but the overall quality is pretty decent if you're okay with the missing adaptive sync and the constant fan noise on idle and under the performance mode, while again, it's absolutely okay in balanced mode in games. And it's of course overall blazing fast for every task you throw at it. And that's it for today's video. Don't forget to check out the dedicated gaming video on this machine next. And if the content was helpful to you, don't forget to like the video and/or subscribe to the channel. That helps a lot. Thank you. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye bye and tschüss.